What's up? Let's talk about motels today. So, hospitality is a real estate investment class that most people never touch. It's kind of niche. For that reason, it appeals to people also because whenever there's an asset class that's just less researched and less hit up for off market deals and stuff like that, there tends to be more opportunities. So I'm going to get into. So at this moment, I've purchased three motels, sold one, so still own two. I've started that journey about 4.5 years ago, something like that. So I've been at it long enough to kind of look back, talk about it, give you a few lessons, what I did right, what I did wrong, and let's just kick it off with like setting the stage how I bought my first motel and why. So at the time that I bought my first motel, I was really looking for, this was 2021 that I was searching, and I closed it in 22, like January of 22. And it was like a 4 month, I mean, we were under contract for like close to 4 months. I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, so it's 2021, right? I've invested in houses, I've invested in multifamily, small multifamily, meaning like a duplex and a triplex and some rental houses. I've tried to do develop. So it's kind of like this. It's like single family home is like your entry level investment. Just buy a house that's a rental, right? After that, it's like your duplex, triplex, fourplex, 4 units and under. It's residential financing, so you can get 30-year fixed loans, just easily. It's built for those kind of like investors who might not be doing real estate as a full-time thing. It's like they got other incomes and stuff like that, and they're just trying to build their real estate portfolio. They're for the most part going to stick to single family homes and then up to four unit buildings. And that's what I did. So in 2021, I'd been a landlord for 8 years, 9 years or so at that point, done the single family, done the small multifamily. And then I was looking for more return. So in 2021, it just felt like the prices were so high. Rates were still low at that point in time, but it just felt like, and I'm in Seattle, right? So looking at Seattle real estate at that time, I mean, you just had to compete so hard to buy anything, even if it was off market, even if you're like, marketing to distressed homeowners and stuff like that, you're still fighting a bunch of, investors that are all trying to get in there and get the deal. So I just decided I got to make more money than what I can make in Seattle. Let me find something else. So I wasn't specifically targeting hospitality. I was looking at, my mind was on mobile home parks. It was on self storage. It was on certainly multifamily, especially bigger buildings, but a value add, strategy. Ultimately, I was looking and looking and looking, and you might know what I mean. It's like you got some money, you got like this idea that you want to put it to work, and it's just like you're not finding, right? So you keep looking kind of crazier and crazier stuff. You start looking in like Texas and things that were like built wrong and need to be rebuilt, or just kind of random stuff. But I came upon this motel, and I had never thought about motels before. But this small town called Colville in northeastern Washington State, which I live in Washington, but it's like completely the other corner of the state. So it's like a solid like between 5.5 and 6 hour drive from my house in Seattle. But it was 18 rooms with the manager apartment. It was, built in the 50s, which these motels that I've purchased, well, two of the three, this is a very, very typical like motel built in the 50s, maybe 60s, but it's built in the 50s. It's got, under 20 doors, under 20 keys, under 20 rooms, however you want to say that. And it has a manager's apartment built into it. And then it's basically just like a little office that people walk into to check in. And then there's an apartment behind it. They built these like a lot because it was just an efficient way to do it, right? Whoever is managing the motel is also living there. And so that's a crucial component. You don't really even want to mess with motels that don't have an apartment behind the office. And I'll get into the staffing of it later in this conversation. So, anyways, I'm looking at this motel. It's built in the 50s. It looks kind of cool, but it's in a small town. It is certainly run down, like the building itself, but it had a NOI of $110,000 so just under 10,000 a month in the previous year on the tax return, right? So it wasn't like, oh, by the way, we get a lot of cash, but it really does like this well, even though all my taxes say this other thing. It's like, no, on the tax returns for consecutive years, it was showing very close to $10,000 a month of NOI. And so when you're and just as a plug for NOI and cap rate, it's like you got to know NOI, you got to know cap rate, because when you're looking at different areas and you're looking at different asset types, it's like you got to come back to a metric that allows you to compare apples to apples, the cash flow, the return, because nothing else is apples to apples, right? You're looking at different areas and different assets and all kind of stuff, different levels of if they're well maintained or not. So, anyways, this had at seven. It was listed at six. It was listed at 700,000, right? And with 10,000 a month of NOI, or very very close to it, that's a cap rate. It was like 16, 17%. I mean, it was a very high cap rate. And so your first question, whenever you hit a high cap rate like that, your first question has to be, yes, but what expenses are they not counting? And the number one thing that will happen is that usually when you'll see a cash flow like this and a cap rate that's like super high, is that, oh well, yeah, the owner is the manager, he lives there, he doesn't pay himself like a salary, he just takes the profits from the motel, right? And that's just like, okay, that's a whole thing. It's like, no, when you're evaluating that as an investor, you don't accept that at all. You just say, okay, fine. Well, if that's how you counted it, now I have to assign him a salary. What would I have to pay a worker to sit in the office 7 days a week, every day of the year? And then, and the answer is you'd have to pay them a hell of a lot of money. You'd have to pay them, $6,000-8,000 a month, right? So essentially, he's just paying himself, through the motel, but the cap rate's not 17%. It's like 5% or something completely different, right? But that was not the case with this motel. That was like an honest NOI. It was an honest cap rate because the seller was not living on premises. He wasn't living in the town. He lived an hour and a half away. He didn't have anything to do with the day-to-day management of the motel at all. So it's like, oh, okay, that really is an asset that is functioning as a cash flowing, operation. So you're just kind of like, well, shoot, that's a lot of cash flow. That's a lot of NOI for a building that's only $700,000. So I put it under contract. I go out there, I talk to the manager, and I'm just trying to you're just trying to get a context, like what's going on here, like because if you or I was making 10,000 of NOI, and that's not cash flow, right? 10,000 NOI is your operating income. Now, you and I, we're going to buy our properties with loans, right? So your mortgage, so in this case, it was basically 10,000 NOI. And then, I was going to get a loan, and the loan was going to cost not even 3,000, but let's call it 3,000 a month. So I'm just like, oh, okay, well, if it's producing 10,000 and I got to give 3,000 to the bank and I keep 7,000 and I'm not there and I'm not dealing with it, why would I ever, like, why is this guy selling it? That doesn't make any sense. If he's making 7,000 without doing anything, why wouldn't he just keep it? And very quickly I found out the manager was cool. She was just like, this has been under contract many times. And I'm just like, okay, well, why didn't people close it? Well, essentially, and she told me, I'm leaving. I'm burned out. I've been working this motel, nonstop. It's just not worth it for me. And so I told the owner that I'm going to leave. And so he said, okay, fine, wait until I sell it and then leave. So she was nice. She was upfront with me because, she didn't want to screw me and like lie to me, even though the owner, the guy who was selling it was telling her to lie. She's like, oh, just lie to everybody. Just tell them you're going to stick around, even though like when it closes, I want to hire you for this other business that I have, right? So anyways, he had burnt out his manager. Finding a manager is everything, right, for a motel of that size. So I'm talking to her. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, do you just not like this type of work, or exactly what is it? She's like, well, I have to clean all the rooms myself. Okay, well, why isn't there a cleaner? Well, it's because the seller will only pay the minimum wage, and at that wage, I can never find anybody that's decent and that is consistent. And so they just come, they quit, they don't show up, and then it's just like a round and round we go. I'm just always looking for somebody else, always cleaning the rooms myself ultimately. And so I'm tired of it. So, I'm thinking like, okay, well, that doesn't seem like a unsolvable problem. So I says, well, how much would it cost to pay a cleaner that would stick around and do good work and relieve you of the burden of cleaning all the rooms? She said $20 an hour. And I was like, okay, the minimum wage is 15, so you just need to be able to pay $5 an hour more, and then you'll be able to staff the motel with cleaners. And then would you stay if that was the scenario? And she's like, yeah, I would stay if I could pay somebody 20 an hour, and then I don't have to clean the rooms, or at least a lot less, and then I'd be happy to stay. Oh, okay. Well, freak, did I just solve the problem? So we move forward. Obviously, I'm skipping a lot of camera issue. Now I got to get back into it. So we move forward. When you're buying a motel, so we put it under contract, and you have, you know two basic things, right? It's inspection and it's financing. Those are the two big pieces, the puzzles that you have to solve. Okay, so now inspection wise, well, let's say three things. There's a feasibility, just like like I was saying, like, okay, so like, why is this person selling? Is this a cash flow that I'm going to be able to continue? Right? There's also obviously like an economic like feasibility, like, or is there some weird thing like, in this case, it was like, oh, the manager is going to leave, so everybody walked away because, oh, well, this manager is going to leave. I don't trust being able to find like a manager in this tiny town that's going to be legit and be able to continue the work that's been done. So all those other buyers perceived that the cash flow was not going to continue, and so they walked away, right? But supposedly, like, I solved that by having that conversation about what do we need to pay a cleaner for you to stay, right? So okay, so that's the economic feasibility of the property. The other two are inspection and financing. So for inspection, now I'm just going to tell you, this motel was totally normal, run of the mill, middle of the road fit motel. So these small motels, they're always like this, almost always. Less than 20 rooms, built in the 50s, a lot of brick cinder block construction, typically one level, but maybe two. And then it'll have a manager, it'll have like a small office where people can walk in and kind of like check in. And then immediately behind the office is an apartment. And that's where the owner, traditionally, like, it would be built or bought by an owner operator. So that owner would live back there, and then they could handle business, right? And that's what you want, right? On these small motels, the that manager is everything, and they have to be able to run stuff from a convenient location, because they essentially, they have to be able to answer the phone at 8 a.m. They have to be able to check people in at 10 p.m. Well, they have to like live there. They can't be like commuting back and forth for every one of these little interactions. So this is a normal motel. Now at that age, at that price, at that cash flow, it's just like, it's not going to be all buttoned up, like, for sure. Whenever there's a property that's going to make a bunch of money, it is not going to be in good shape. It just won't. And that was the case with this one. So just to give you like a sense of kind of like the property and the situation. All right, so to get into just kind of like, here's the one issue that I'm going to explain that kind of give you an idea of the motel's condition. So this was built with a slab foundation, concrete, and they embedded the plumbing into that concrete, which is typical for this area and for this era of build. And but as will happen, with galvanized plumbing, okay, they need access to those pipes, right? So what they ended up doing is they ended up digging out a tunnel underneath the slab foundation so they could get up underneath and kind of like access the pipes. And this is totally like Wild West type stuff. You're just like, what? Like, this is not good. This is not how it was supposed to be done. It's not how it was designed. Ultimately, I was very concerned about that, obviously. Um, I got an engineer to take a look. He gave me his opinion. Like, it's probably been like that for a few decades. It's actually probably pretty stable. It's definitely not what should have happened, but at this point, it very well might be fine for another few decades or whatever. So to me, it's just a weighing, it's just a balance. Don't be that investor that's like, oh, I want to make money, I want to make money, I want. But then it's like when there's a little hair on the deal, then you're like, oh no, I'll never do that. It's like you got to take the hair. You know what I mean? That's how it is to make the money. So I just said, okay, whatever. Let's just move on this because the cash flow is strong. From that cash flow, we can take money and we can pay for the ongoing maintenance and the headaches that's going to be involved in maintaining the plumbing system. And yeah, it's literally just a tunnel. Like I've been down there before, but not very much. And it's like, yeah, a lot. We've had plumbers go out there and be like, no, dude, I'm not going in there. So, that's just kind of a weird thing. You just kind of have to accept to try to get that margin, try to get that return. So that's inspection. Financing. So I was kind of talking in the beginning, like, most people are going to be in this sandbox of like houses, duplex, triplex, fourplexes, right? That's all residential financing, and that's all good stuff. Right? You're gonna get low rates compared to commercial. You're gonna get fixed for 30 years, so you don't have to worry about it. It can be locked in rate. On the commercial side of things, that's everybody else, right? So if you're 5 units or more, or if you're any property type besides residential, that's commercial financing. And the loan that I got on this first motel, which is the Selkirk Motel, it's in Colville, Washington. Um, it is commercial financing, and what I got was a normal loan. 5 years, it was fixed at 4.5%. Because at the point that I bought it, rates were great. So 4.5% rate, fixed for 5 years, and then after that it floats. So had to put down 25%. Now, financing through a bank is like, and just to kind of give you a heads up. So you have residential financing, which for a motel you can't get, right? Then you have commercial financing, and then you have seller financing. With the right selling, the seller has the right situation, they can finance anything, right? And that's ideal. And the last motel that we bought was with seller financing. The first two that we bought were with commercial financing. But so it's going to be very hard if you're getting into motels. Your first deal is going to be very hard to get financing. So I had been a real estate agent for a long time. So in real estate, I'd had rental properties for a long time. I'd had multifamily for a long time, and so they were kind of like, okay, you're in the ballpark. But the reason why I got financing was because I was like more or less acceptable to them. But principally, it's because like they looked at the tax returns, which is what they will always look at. They said, okay, well, it's got a 10,000 a month NOI. That's going to comfortably be able to afford the mortgage payment to us of 3,000. So they're like, okay, we'll do it. So 25% down. I got that loan. Um, but it's just tough. Like they're going to scrutinize anybody who's trying to buy properties, because especially like a lot of the good deals that you want to buy, there's some upside, right? It's poorly managed or whatever. Well, the bank's going to look and be like, yeah, you think you're going to do a lot better than the past. We think you might do worse. You know what I mean? That's how they look at it. So they want to minimize their risk. Those are not exciting loans for a bank. For a bank to do a loan on a motel, I was purchasing that for $700,000, 25% down. That's a $525,000 loan. That's a crappy tiny loan to a lender, and it's a lot of risk. And so like they don't really like to do it. It'll be hard to get people to call you back. And just a complaint about it is like, man, I purchased two motels with commercial financing. They would every time they're like, oh yeah, no, we close those in 45 days. They don't close it in 45 days. They don't close it in 60 days. They might close it in 75 days. And that's not just motels, that's like apartment buildings too. So that's a big frustration I have, is just like there's no reason for them to promise things and not deliver, because as the buyer, when you're buying commercial real estate, you're setting an expectation with the seller because you have a closing date in your offer, right? And when you can't meet the closing date, you're asking for extensions. It's uncomfortable. It adds a lot of uncertainty to the transaction, and that sucks. So now I'm a commercial loan broker, so I get more control of that whole process, and I don't have to deal with that now. But that's a frustration to me of just like commercial loans in general. So the management of motels, this is kind of like the fundamental like takeaway from this video, is that you make money and lose money with the management of the motels. Okay. And so that first motel, we bought it and we had a great manager in, right? So she was there for a few months. Then we actually ended up buying a second motel and she moved to that one and managed that one. So there was a vacuum of the management at this motel. So what happened? For a period of time, we ran it with the cleaners at being the managers. Did not work at all. Okay, that's not it just didn't work. Then we hired a manager. Did okay, but then took off. Then we had another one. Did okay, then took off. Then so it was like a revolving door. And the reason why is because it's a very difficult job. They're not necessarily working like super intensely all the time, but they're kind of working all the time. Like people will knock and wake up the manager at midnight because they have to know what time checkout is. I mean, they just deal with this kind of stuff, and not all the time, but it happens, you know. And when you're like at like I wouldn't want to live at work, you know. I don't want to live at my work, and people might just like call me all hours of the day or need stuff or get locked out or whatever. But that's what they're dealing with. All right, so the setup with all these managers that I put together, the compensation package was like this: you live there for free, you don't pay rent, you don't pay utilities, you don't pay internet. That's just covered, right? You get a salary of 4,000 a month, and then you get 20% commission on profits, and that's month by month. Okay, and that's a very good package. But even still, people get burned out and then they just don't want to do it anymore because it's a small town. They don't want to, have that level of wear and tear on their lives where they're just kind of like always around. And they would get a day off a week, but still, it's a grind, and I totally get that. Here's what you have to find if you're going to own a motel and run a motel in a traditional sense, where you are hiring managers, and then managers, and you're hiring cleaners, and you're collecting the profits, and you're paying bonuses and stuff like that. You got to have a couple. Essentially, you have to have a manager and a cleaner. Like, you have to keep that very tight. You can't have a bunch of cleaners and backup people, and you have to be very, very tight with those expenses, because the labor expenses are your biggest expenses. But so it really needs to be a couple. It needs to be like a man, like the woman typically will be the caretaker of the people, and then the husband is kind of like a part-time. You don't need a full-time handyman at all, but you do need somebody who can kind of like take care of the plugged up sinks, and the different little things that happen. And so you kind of need that scenario, and you need one cleaner basically. And then that you're kind of limited. You can't go with more headcount than that. So the situation that I had. So anyways, yeah, hired cleaner. I mean, we hired a manager, then a new manager, then a new manager. So a year and a half ago, um, I'm kind of like, okay, we're about to move back from Portugal, because we bought this motel in January 2022 and moved to Portugal in August 22. So I'm kind of like out of the loop, right? I'm just kind of like managing it from far away. I did come back and visit sometimes, but it just didn't never do well. Like it would make some money and then it would lose some money. It would make some and then lose some. And I felt like I was never getting ahead. So a year and a half ago, I was like, all right, I'm coming back. It's time for this thing to make money, right? I hire a couple, perfect couple, right? She has experience in hospitality, like managing other motels. They had finished up a life phase and they were moving, and they were excited to move to this small town called Colville. And the guy was super handy, right? That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Okay, put him in there, and they just start killing it, right? And she starts, making pastries in the morning. People are loving it. The reviews are super good. The motel's filling up, and I'm starting to make money, right? And I'm feeling so good about it, because I'm like, yes, this is how we're going to make money now. Finally, going to make money. So we pull out 5,000 of cash a month, then 10,000, then 15,000 of cash in a month. That's killer money, right? Uh, you know, there was a month where we had it was forest fires, so we had tons of firefighters filling up the motel, and the motel revenue was like 60 grand in that month. And so what we would do is like we'd have like a break even revenue of like 29 grand, and then the any money over that, the manager would keep 20%, and then I would keep the rest, right? And so they're willing to do that, right? And make everybody happy and fill up the motel because they're getting that 20%, but only to a point, right? Only to a point. And so this is my fundamental takeaway from owning motels for the last 4 years. And I'm just gonna like pose it as a question: can you make good money with small motels? The answer is actually no. And I should probably have led with that instead of talking about this for so long. But no, it's not, because even in that situation with the perfect couple and the perfect location. By the way, this location is perfect. You don't, if you're not familiar with motels, you're going to think, oh, I want that one in wine country where people, a bunch of girlfriends can go for the weekend and taste wine and like spend 200, 300 a night on a room. No, you don't. You probably don't, because they will fill you up on Friday night and Saturday night, and maybe not even Friday night. It might just be Saturday night for like summer weekends, and maybe like Christmas or something, or New Year's or something, and then you'll lose money the whole rest of the year. This location in Colville, totally the opposite. It's got a lot of long-term stays, people that will stay, like, because it's a small town. So when a big project is happening, they have to bring people in from Spokane. That's an hour and a half away. So okay, those people are staying. They arrive Sunday night, leave Thursday, week after week after week. And so the average length of stay is a crucial metric. Average length of stay up in Colville, it's like 4 nights. It's like 3.8, something like that. Man, when we owned this other motel in a more touristy place, it was like 1.2. Oh, you can't make money. You can't make money. People coming in for one night. It's just too hard. So much cleaning, so much management of the guests just for one night. You want that person that's going to come back week after week after week. They know the routine. They get familiar. They get happy. They love it. That's what you want. So, anyways, even with this ideal scenario, the right manager, the right location, bought it at a good price, so there's not like a really high debt cost or anything like that. We still didn't really make money, because even despite stacking that cash during those good months, hospitality, man, it is cyclical. It goes whatever, however good it is, it can be that bad also. And so suddenly, instead of like pulling out 10 grand or 15 grand, I'm putting in 5 grand, then I'm putting in 7 grand. And that money, and then I have to fix something, and then the money's just gone. So I kind of, after enough years, and especially that last year of me just kind of like, look, getting super dialed in and paying attention and everything, still didn't really make enough money compared to how much effort was going into the property, right? So, but when I said you can't make money off of motels, I actually don't think that that's true. What I mean, and the nuance is like, you can't make money on small motels in a traditional sense. So if you're going to buy it and you're going to run it, so you are the one hiring the managers and you're responsible for the profits and losses of the business, then I'm never going to do that again. But what I've done is like, so with this couple, right? It wasn't going that well. I'm losing money. She's also feeling like, hey, I need a raise. I've been here a year. How come I'm not getting a raise? I want a raise. And I kept having the conversation. No, you can't get the raise because you get commissions. Like, that's how you get paid extra, is when when there's profits, you make more money. But what anybody who's like an employee, like, they're never gonna really understand how it is, but you do, because it's like, yeah, when we make 10 grand, you keep 2, I keep 8. Cool, everybody's happy, right? But the next month when we lose 10, I lose the entire 10. You don't your salary doesn't go down. You don't start paying rent on that unit or utilities. No, I just eat all the losses, right? So that cyclical nature kills me. And there's you can set up the incentives any way you want. Any way you want. Average, of course you could say, oh, we'll just average over the year, average the profits over the year, and then only pay the bonus after the year. Nobody wants to wait a year for a bonus. Like, that's not going to help. That's not going to motivate them, et cetera, et cetera. You can do anything you want, but I've tried enough things and owned motels long enough to know that fundamentally this is the truth. Whoever is running that motel, whoever is living there, taking the late night phone calls, taking care of the guest complaints, etc., that person has to own the business. That's not the same as that person has to own the real estate. No, they have to own the business, not the real estate. See, me, I got into motels not because I had this like dramatically like idyllic view of like, oh, I'm gonna be the innkeeper that's gonna like welcome people. No, I just want to make money. I love real estate. I want to own real estate. I believe in real estate as a vehicle for building wealth. I have no idea, no interest in like greeting guests and being best friends with them and telling them about the restaurants that are, you know, walk a block that way and ask for Sue and she'll make you some soup. I don't care, right? But a lot of people do care about that. So this manager couple that's in Selkirk right now, after finally I could conclude, I'm like, there's no money in this. I was like, screw it. Why am I even doing this? So I said, I talked to them. I said, look, you guys like being here. They love it, right? But they want to make more money. And so they're kind of like starting to feel unhappy with the amount of money that they're making. I'm like, okay, how about this? You start an LLC. You guys own the LLC. The LLC is the business of this motel, is the business of running Selkirk Motel. I reduce my involvement down to the landlord. You run the business, you collect the money from the guests, you take care of the guests, you can respond to the reviews online, you run everything. You just pay me rent every month for the building. So my money isn't going up and going down. They get to experience all of that and they get to keep 100% of the profits, right? So as even though the 20% bonus that we were doing, that's motivating, but nothing like 100%. If you keep 100% of the profits, it's $1 for $1 in your pocket. Okay, well you're gonna act different, you're gonna work different. That's just human nature, right? So we only made this change a few months ago. So it hasn't been going on long enough for me to say, is this the answer? But I believe that it could be. I'm surprised at how many people there are who are willing to do this. See, I see things in my own way, which is like I want the real estate, I want long-term wealth. I don't want to run a business, you know. But there's actually a lot of people who they do want to run a business. They're not that concerned. They're not concerned at all about real estate or like the long-term wealth of real estate. They're happy to just own the business and run the business and make money, you know, through their own work. So that's that marriage. You know, it's like I can find the deals, I can buy the deals, and then I can find the right person to simply step in and run their own business. Now, you would think like, okay, so essentially, I don't know if this is clear, but there's two different ways to own motels, right? What I had been doing for my first 4 years, almost 4 years, is like I bought the building and then I also ran the business from far away. You know, I'm in Seattle, they're 6 hours away in Colville, and I am hiring the manager, and then I'm asking the manager, hey, how come it's taking so long to clean the rooms, or how come we need to watch this expense or that one, you know? And they're like, oh, okay, you know, and I'm like managing, right? There's not enough property. There's not enough money in these small buildings for that person who's there doing all the work to get paid the amount of money commensurate with their efforts and have money left over for me. I ran it for 4 years. I never really got any money to me, right? They would get money and I just wouldn't get money. So that style, that traditional sense, I don't think is going to work. But this other way of like, well, I just own the building, you just pay me rent, and then you get to keep all the money, that's much more efficient, right? They're much more motivated. They have every reason. And this couple has absolutely taken over. They're refreshing stuff. They're taking care. They have so much pride in what they're doing, and the motel's doing amazing. And I hope that it will continue to do amazing. And they can just pay me a rent. I don't need to make a lot, right? But just so you know, it's like 7,500 a month in rent. Okay, you know, my mortgage at the bank's like 3,000. Man, I'm good. I'm good. I'm way good with that, you know, because before it was like, yeah, I would make a lot, but then I would lose it, and then something has to get fixed, like a big repair or something, then I got to pay much for that. It's too much headache. So, anyways, this is the new model that I'm pursuing. So I'm gonna run you really. So that was the first motel. you kind of saw cradle to grave, at least, all from the last 4.5 years to now. That's kind of how it was run in a nutshell. It's like I learned over 4 years, like you can't be involved in this and make a bunch of money. You have to just make it a passive and just get like a fixed, smaller. It's honestly like I'm not even making less. I'm making just as much. It's just my headaches are zero. Like I'm not involved in anything. It's going great. They're even responsible for the repairs and maintenance and everything. So I think it's a really great model. Again, in a year, then I'll say, oh, I was completely wrong. That sucks too. Maybe. But I hope in a year, 2 years from now, I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm buying a lot more because finally I found the model that works. You know, I see a lot of potential in motels because it's like, it's a distressed asset. Like people aren't able to, most people can't make money with it. But if I can do it, if I can make money in this way, there's gonna be a ton of sellers that will sell me their motel for very good prices, very good terms. I just need to find, and it's very easy. Like there's a lot of people out there that want to run their own motel, you know, and they're not good at saving. They're never gonna have enough money saved up to actually buy a building, but they can run a motel in a killer way, right? So those people are definitely out there because I've talked to some of them. I've hired some of them now. So that's the first motel. Second motel, really quick, Kashmir, Washington, Kashmir Inn. Bought it for $1 million, sold it for 1.9 a few years later, but didn't really make that much money because spent a few $100,000 on like fixing it all up, and also lost like a couple $100,000 just on the operations of it. And why did I lose a couple $100,000 over 3 years of owning that property? It's because the managers that were in place got really cozy with the cleaners, and I turned around and I wasn't paying attention, and so it's my fault. But turned around and in a 20-room motel, 20 rooms, I had two managers, a manager couple, right? But I was paying both of them like a legit wage and salary. I had two managers and like four cleaners on a 20-room motel. So that's how you lost. That's how you lose 200. You got to have a manager couple. It's basically like you pay the woman to kind of caretake and be the head manager, and then the guy is like the handyman that you kind of pay hourly, depending on his skills and stuff like that. And that's how you do it with one cleaner. I mean, that's just how you got to do it. But that's only if you're trying to hire those people. Ultimately, like I say, my message is don't even hire anybody. Don't hire anybody. No employees. You're just a landlord. Find those people who can run it, who are interested in running it themselves. That's how you do it. Otherwise, you're just like, chasing down every expense, trying to optimize constantly, and you're still not going to make money. It won't happen. So that was that second motel. The lesson I learned on that one was just like, I didn't learn it, soon enough, but it's just like, don't, it's like, yeah, don't let it go. I was trying to run the business without even running the business. It was just terrible. Luckily though, like we did a good job getting it sold at a good price. The last one that I just bought a couple months ago is in Chihuahua, and that one, bought it for 500,000, 50K down, seller financing, because I couldn't get a loan for it from a bank at all. I was trying to get the guy his cash, but it was just impossible because he'd run it at such a low revenue. Like no, I couldn't get a loan. So he financed it at 6% interest rate for 10 years before a balloon payment. So that one I'm very excited about. That one, and by the way, how did I find these properties, right? The first one in Selkirk, that one was listed on commercialmls.com, um, which is kind of like not a big website, but that's how I found it. I didn't see it on LoopNet or anything like that. The second one, it was listed on the MLS, so it would have popped up on Redfin or Zillow, but it wasn't listed anywhere else, which is also very weird because LoopNet is by far the number one place that people list and sell and buy motels. The last one that I just bought, that one I just was calling. I called like a couple hundred motels. Hey, do you want to sell? Hey, do you want to sell? Everybody said no, except for this one guy was like, yeah, I might want to sell. He ended up selling me his property, and a very cool guy. I like that dude. But yeah, that's how I found each one of those motel deals. So large takeaway, man, is just like, if you want to be like the innkeeper that like has a lifestyle, like kind of like an Airbnb type mindset, like, oh, I want people to come and stay and I want to like hear their stories and stuff. Okay, you can make money. If you're like me and you're like a real estate investor who's just trying to make money, don't do it. Don't do motels unless you're gonna pursue like this model that I'm pursuing now, and that's not proven yet. I think it'll work. But it hasn't been long enough for me to say, yeah, yeah, it works. So, anyways, be very, very mindful of how much time it takes to manage. And like hiring a manager doesn't mean that you are managing that manager like crazy. And if you're not, you're going to lose money. So that's my takeaway, man. Motels. I'm not afraid of it. I think it's been super fun. If I prove that this model does work, I'm going to be able to rack up so many motels because so many of these motels are run poorly, and there's so many tired motel owners, and there's so few buyers for them. So there's huge possibilities for purchasing, but the reason is because most people don't make money with it. So you got to kind of solve the puzzle. But if like for instance, if I can solve the puzzle, I'm confident I'll be able to buy like a couple motels a year probably. That's my optimism because I haven't actually done it yet. It's always so easy until you actually do it. But right.